The Chaos Gods do not forgive. They do not need to. Forgiveness implies that something was taken from them that they wish to recover. But the gods of the warp lose nothing when they are betrayed. They simply recalculate, adjust, reclaim what was always theirs. You cannot betray chaos. You can only delay your purpose. To understand how the ruinous powers punish those who turn from them, you must first understand what devotion to chaos actually means. Not the propaganda the Imperium spreads, not the simplified catechisms that ecclesiarchy preachers use to frighten children. You must understand the transaction. When a mortal pledges themselves to chaos, whether through desperation or ambition, whether knowingly or in ignorance, they are not making a deal. They are acknowledging a relationship that already exists. The Chaos Gods are not distant entities waiting to be summoned. They are fundamental forces woven into the psychic fabric of reality itself. They are emotion given consciousness, desire given form. They do not exist in a place you can leave. They exist in you. Khorne feeds on rage and bloodshed. Every murder, every battle, every moment of violent fury strengthens him, whether the killer swears his name or not. But those who consciously dedicate themselves to the blood god receive his attention, his gifts, his blessings. They become channels through which his power flows more easily into reality. Tzeentch feeds on ambition and change. Every scheme, every mutation, every manipulation of fate feeds the architect of fate. Those who pledge themselves become pieces in his games, moved across boards they cannot perceive. Nurgle feeds on despair and endurance. Every disease, every acceptance of suffering, every grim determination to continue despite decay strengthens the Plague Lord. His followers become gardens where new afflictions bloom. Slaanesh feeds on excess and sensation. Every indulgence, every pursuit of perfection, every experience pushed beyond healthy limits nourishes the Prince of Pleasure. Devotees become instruments played until their strings break. The gods give power in exchange for service. They grant blessings. They elevate mortals to daemonhood. They whisper secrets and reshape flesh and break the laws of physics for those who please them. This appears to be a bargain. It appears to be a relationship between two parties with separate interests. It is not. The gods are not employers. They are not allies. They are forces of nature that happen to be conscious. When you serve chaos, you are not working for the gods. You are expressing their nature through your actions. You are a wave believing it has autonomy from the ocean. This is why betrayal is impossible, and why the punishment for attempting it is so absolute. His name had been Cale Vane. That name meant nothing now, but it had once meant something to him. Sergeant, 15th Mortisian Infantry, 22 years of service, 3 campaign badges, a wife who stopped writing after the second deployment, a son he had seen twice. The Mortisian Guard were not famous. They were not the elite Cadian shock troops or the brutal catechans or the death-obsessed Kriegers. They were ordinary soldiers from an ordinary world who did ordinary service for the God Emperor. They died in ordinary ways, usually from artillery fire they never saw coming. Cale had survived longer than most. This was not because he was particularly skilled. It was because he was careful. He watched the veterans and copied what they did. He never volunteered. He kept his head down during inspections. He made himself useful enough to be valued, but not so capable that he drew dangerous assignments. He had, in other words, learned to work the system. He was rotting, but it was not grandfather's sacred rot. It was just decay, meaningless, painful. On the 60th day, the voice returned. "Did you think switching gods was like changing uniforms?" It laughed, and the sound had edges like broken glass. "Did you think you could simply walk away from one power and into the arms of another?" "You offered me change," Cale said. His voice was weak now. The strength had left his lungs. "I offered you the truth about change," the voice corrected. "That all things transform, that nothing remains static. You are changing, Cale, right now, into something neither Nurgle nor I have use for." "Please," Cale said. "I'll serve you. Just stop this." "Stop what? Your transformation? But this is what you wanted, to transcend your limitations, to become something new." The voice laughed again. "You are becoming an example." Cale did not die quickly. This was the point. This was the lesson that his existence would teach to every other mortal who thought about turning from their patron god. The Chaos Gods do not compete for worship the way human religions do. They do not need your faith. They feed on fundamental aspects of consciousness that occur whether you acknowledge them or not. But they do offer gifts to those who serve them consciously, and those gifts come with invisible chains. When you dedicate yourself to a Chaos God, you are not making a contract. You are reshaping your soul to resonate with that God's nature. You become a part of their domain in the warp. Your very essence is altered to channel their power more efficiently. This cannot be undone. It can only be overwritten. When Kale performed Tzeentch's ritual, he began the process of spiritual transformation. His soul, which had been remade in Nurgle's image, started to shift toward change, but the transformation was incomplete. Tzeentch had not fully claimed him, and Nurgle had not fully released him. He was caught between, a soul pulling itself in two directions, a being that existed in neither domain properly. The Imperium does not tolerate such ambiguity. Reality itself is thin where the warp bleeds through, and a soul without a clear allegiance becomes a wound through which unreality pours. Kale began to come apart, not physically at first. His body remained mostly intact, though sick and failing, but his mind fragmented. He would have thoughts that were not his, memories that belonged to people he had never met, desires that contradicted themselves second by second. He wanted to serve Nurgle. He wanted to serve Tzeentch. He wanted to serve the Emperor again. He wanted to die. He wanted to live forever. He wanted all of this simultaneously, each want as genuine and desperate as the others. When he tried to speak, different voices came out. When he tried to walk, his legs moved in directions he had not intended. His body was becoming a democracy of impulses with no executive function to coordinate them. On the 80th day, daemons began to notice him, not to help, to observe. Minor warp entities would materialize nearby and watch him with the curiosity of children watching an insect drown. Sometimes they would poke at him, metaphysically, spiritually, to see what happened. His fragmented soul would spasm and they would laugh. Nurgle's daemons found him particularly interesting. Nurglings, small, playful, mischievous lesser daemons, would gather around him and mimic his suffering. They would pretend to fall apart and then pull themselves back together, giggling at the joke. This was not cruelty exactly. Nurgle's daemons do not comprehend cruelty. They were simply showing him what he could have had, what he had abandoned. See? See how easy it is? You just accept, you just let go, but you tried to want more, and now you can't even want properly. The Tzeentchian daemons were more subtle. Horrors and flamers would appear in the distance, watching him with unblinking eyes. Sometimes they would whisper fragments of knowledge, useless, contradictory, maddening. They showed him futures that could never be, pasts that had never happened, presents that existed only in potential. You could still serve change, they would say, if you simply let go of everything else, including yourself. Kale couldn't let go. That was the problem. His fragmented soul clung to every piece of itself, unable to surrender any part of the contradictory whole. On the 100th day, something fundamental broke. When Kale's soul finally shattered, it did not disappear. The fragments remained in his body, animating it through sheer metaphysical momentum. He continued walking, breathing, existing, but there was no unified consciousness directing these actions. He was a collection of warring impulses piloting a decaying vessel. Other Chaos cultists found him eventually. A warband sworn to Khorne, traveling through the ruins of Gallus Prime, stumbled across what had once been Sergeant Kale Vane. They should have killed him. It would have been a mercy. But the warband's leader, a Chaos Lord with enough experience to recognize what he was seeing, stopped them. "Leave it," he commanded. "Let it wander. It's suffering," one of the bloodletters said. Even daemons of Khorne, who live for slaughter, could see that what Kale experienced went beyond any worthy combat. "Yes," the Chaos Lord agreed, "and that suffering serves a purpose. It teaches." He was right. Over the following months, Kale's existence became a cautionary tale whispered across the warbands of the Maelstrom, a story told to new cultists and ambitious champions. A reminder of what happens when you try to switch allegiances between the powers. The Imperium has legends of saints, perfect servants of the Emperor whose devotion was so pure that miracles manifested around them. Chaos has the opposite, negative examples, beings whose mistakes are so absolute that they become object lessons in what not to do. Kale became one of these. Cultists would make pilgrimages to see him, not to mock, though some did, mostly to witness. To understand viscerally that you do not betray the dark gods, not because they are cruel, but because betrayal is a category error. You cannot betray a force of nature. You can only misunderstand what you are to it. Sorcerers of Tzeentch would bring their apprentices to observe how a soul tears itself apart when pulled between opposed powers. Plague priests of Nurgle would show him to new converts as proof of why acceptance is necessary. Even Khornate champions would pause in their wandering to look at what ambition without honor produces. Kale, or what remained, continued to exist for years, decades, possibly. Time works strangely in places where the warp bleeds through. His body should have died 1,000 times, but the conflicting energies animating him prevented even the release of death. He became a fixture, a landmark. Cultists would navigate by him, 3 kilometers past the Broken One. Northeast of where the Betrayer walks, he was geography now, terrain. Eventually, the Imperial Guard retook Gallos Prime. After 4 years of siege and counter-siege, after millions of casualties, after orbital bombardment that rendered 70% of the world uninhabitable, they drove back the Chaos forces and declared victory. They found Kale during the final sweep. The sanctioned psyker attached to the clearing force took one look at him and vomited. Not from physical revulsion, though Kale's body was unpleasant. From psychic feedback, from seeing what Kale had become in the Immaterium. "Burn it," the psyker gasped. "Emperor's mercy, burn it now." They did. They burned him with promethium and blessed fire. They burned him until there was nothing left but ash. They scattered the ash across 3 different waste disposal units. They purged the units afterward. It did not help. Kale's body was destroyed. His soul was already destroyed. But the lesson remained. This is how chaos punishes betrayal. Not through torture, though there is torture. Not through death, though death would be a mercy, but through transformation into warning, into example, into a story that will be told forever in the dark places of the galaxy. The Imperium burns heretics and moves on, learning nothing. The Chaos Gods are more efficient. They make each failure instructive. They waste nothing, not even mistakes. Every cultist who turned from their god becomes a parable. Every ambitious champion who thought they could switch allegiances becomes a milestone on someone else's path. Kale is not unique. There are thousands like him across the galaxy, maybe tens of thousands. Beings caught between powers, unable to die, unable to live, unable to escape what they made of themselves. They exist in the spaces between, in the ruins, in the warp storms, in the places where reality is thin enough that the Immaterium can preserve them. Some serve as living seals, their suffering holding closed wounds in reality that would otherwise spill daemons into the Materium. Some serve as psychic beacons, drawing in potential cultists so that proper servants of the gods can find them. Some serve no purpose at all except to exist as proof. The Imperium would call this cruel, but cruelty implies intention to cause suffering for its own sake. The Chaos Gods do not think in those terms. They are forces, principles. When you betray them, you are not being punished. You are experiencing the natural consequence of violating your own nature. Kale transformed himself into a servant of Nurgle. Then he tried to transform himself into a servant of Tzeentch. The contradiction shattered him. The Chaos Gods did not decide to do this to him. He did it to himself. They simply refused to prevent it. This is the distinction the Imperium never understands. They believe chaos is evil, that it actively seeks to corrupt and destroy. But chaos does not seek, it simply is. It is the reflection of consciousness itself, of emotion, of thought. It gives you what you want, and what you want is usually the thing that destroys you. Kale wanted to escape suffering. Nurgle gave him that. Then Kale wanted to escape limitations. Tzeentch showed him that all limitations are spiritual, so Kale destroyed his own limitations by destroying himself. He got exactly what he asked for. This is how chaos always works. To understand what happened to Kale, you must understand the structure of the warp itself. The Immaterium is not a place. It is a dimension of pure thought and emotion. Every conscious being in the material universe contributes to it. Every feeling, every desire, every fear bleeds through into the warp and becomes substance there. The Chaos Gods are the largest, most stable formations in this ocean of consciousness. vast entities formed from the accumulated emotions of trillions of souls across millions of years. When you dedicate yourself to a Chaos God, you are establishing a connection. Your soul becomes a channel through which that God's nature flows into reality. In exchange, the God's power flows into you. You become stronger, more capable, more aligned with the fundamental force you serve. But this alignment is not metaphorical. It is structural. Your soul is reshaped. The patterns of thought and emotion that define your consciousness are overwritten with patterns that resonate with your patron god. You don't just worship Khorne, you become a small piece of Khorne. You don't just serve Nurgle, you become an extension of his garden. This is why the gifts are so powerful. You are not being given strength from outside. You are being connected to a vast reservoir of strength that already exists. The Chaos God is allowing you to draw on their infinite power. All you have to do is maintain the connection. When you try to switch allegiances, you are attempting to rewire your soul while it is still connected to the first power. Imagine trying to rebuild a power station while it is actively channeling a lightning storm. The energy does not stop flowing. It cannot stop flowing. But you are redirecting the channels, and the energy goes places it was not meant to go. The result is catastrophic. Some souls simply burn out. Consumed by the contradictory energies, they cease to exist. These are the lucky ones. They experience a moment of transcendent agony and then nothing. They do not persist as warnings because there is nothing left to serve as warning. Others, like Kale, are structurally robust enough that they do not burn out completely. Instead, they become stable contradictions, beings that should not exist but do. The warp is full of paradoxes, and it accepts them because the warp is paradox. But existence as a paradox is not pleasant. It is not intended to be. It simply is. The Chaos Gods do not maintain these broken souls out of sadism. They maintain them because the warp maintains them. Once you are connected to a god, that connection persists until it is completely severed or completely overwritten. Attempting to do both simultaneously leaves the connection in a state of quantum uncertainty. The soul exists in multiple states at once. The warp, which is the realm of infinite possibilities, allows this. Reality, which demands singular definitions, rejects it. So these souls exist in the spaces between, neither fully in the warp nor fully in reality, neither alive nor dead, neither free nor enslaved. They are the spiritual equivalent of a number divided by zero. A calculation that produces not an answer but an error, and the error persists, running in an infinite loop because there is no mechanism to terminate it. This is not punishment in any human sense. It is consequence, mathematical, inevitable, impersonal. Kale's story is one among many. The galaxy produces thousands of betrayers every day, and each receives their education in the same fundamental truth. You do not leave chaos. You complete your transformation into what chaos needs you to be, or you become an example of why not to resist that transformation. On a world called Septimus Reach, a champion of Slaanesh named Valine the Radiant tried to turn to Khorne after growing bored with excess. She wanted rage instead of pleasure, wanted simplicity instead of endless sensation. Khorne does not accept defectors from Slaanesh. The blood god demands pure warriors, untainted by the Prince of Pleasure's influence. Valine's transformation stalled halfway. Now she exists in constant contradiction, experiencing every sensation as simultaneously peak pleasure and unbearable pain, unable to distinguish between ecstasy and agony. She leads a warband still, she fights still, but she screams through every battle, and no one can tell if she is celebrating or suffering. Perhaps she cannot tell either. On the space hulk called Inevitable Sorrow, a sorcerer named Malthus attempted to serve all four gods equally. He thought he was being clever. If one power granted gifts, would not four powers grant fourfold blessings? He built his rituals to honor each god in sequence, never favoring one over others. The gods found this amusing at first, then tedious, then offensive. A soul cannot resonate with contradictory principles simultaneously. Malthus's consciousness fractured into four pieces, each aligned with a different power, each warring for control of their shared body. His body is now a battleground. Different limbs serve different gods. When he casts sorcery, the spells interfere with each other, producing effects that benefit no one. He is alive, technically, but he has not had a coherent thought in centuries. On the daemon world of Medrengard, a cornate berserker named Scar tried to embrace Nurgle after a battle left him dying slowly from infected wounds. He wanted the pain to stop, wanted grandfather's peace. But Khorne does not release his warriors. The infection spread, but Scar did not die. The rage remained, but he could not move quickly enough to satisfy it. He exists now in a state of perpetual dying, rotting from within but unable to fall, driven by cornate fury but trapped in nurgling flesh. The other cornates keep him as a reminder. See what happens when you show weakness? See what happens when you seek comfort? Better to die in battle than to live seeking peace. These are not anomalies. They are the standard outcome. The Chaos Gods do not need to actively punish those who try to leave. The metaphysics of dedication handles it automatically. You cannot betray a force that you have made yourself part of. You can only tear yourself apart trying. The Imperium tells its citizens that chaos is evil, that it corrupts the pure and damns the innocent, that the dark gods are enemies to be fought with faith and firepower. This is not quite wrong, but it is not quite right either. Chaos is not evil in any moral sense. Chaos is extreme. It is emotion and desire taken to their ultimate conclusions. The problem is not that chaos corrupts you. The problem is that it gives you what you think you want, and what you think you want is usually terrible for you. The Imperium's propaganda teaches that you can resist chaos through faith in the Emperor. This is partially true. Faith provides structure. It gives the soul something to cling to besides the whispers of the warp. A faithful servant of the Emperor is genuinely harder to corrupt than a cynic or an atheist. But faith is not armor. It is a competing dedication. And if that dedication wavers, if the Imperium fails you badly enough, if you suffer deeply enough, if you are betrayed by those you trusted, then the faith cracks, and chaos flows into those cracks like water into stone, freezing and expanding until the stone splits. The Imperium does not understand that every commissar who executes a loyal soldier for showing fear, every administrator who denies medical supplies to save costs, every preacher who demands faith while living in luxury, all of them are feeding the Chaos Gods. They are creating the despair that feeds Nurgle, the rage that feeds Khorne, the desperation that feeds Tzeentch, the excess that feeds Slaanesh. And when those soldiers and citizens finally break and turn to chaos, the Imperium calls it corruption, calls it weakness, never examines what drove them there, never questions whether an empire that produces millions of heretics every year might be structured to produce heretics. This is why the Chaos Gods do not need to punish betrayal harshly. The punishment is built into the system. You come to chaos because something failed you. Chaos gives you what you need, or what you think you need. Then when chaos asks for service in return, you discover that service is absolute, that you cannot simply take the gifts and walk away, that you have signed a contract written in the structure of your own soul. Some realize this and serve faithfully. They become champions, daemon princes, powerful sorcerers. They accept what they are and lean into it. These servants thrive, relatively speaking. Chaos rewards genuine commitment. Others realize this and panic. They try to escape, to switch sides, to find a loophole. These servants become examples, not because the gods are cruel, but because escape is metaphysically impossible. The tutorial is written in the ruin of those who tried. Kael was ordinary. He made an ordinary mistake. He received an ordinary punishment. His story is repeated constantly with minor variations across a million worlds. The names change, the details shift, but the outcome is always the same. You do not betray chaos. You discover what chaos is, and you either accept it or you break trying to deny it. 300 years after Kael's death, or transformation, or persistence, depending on how you measure existence, a prophet of Tzeentch named Jarael wrote a text called The Mechanics of Divine Service. It was not a grimoire, it was an analysis. Jarael had been an imperial administrator before his fall, and he brought that analytical mindset to his study of chaos. The text survived in fragments, copied by other sorcerers, hidden in libraries that existed in 5 dimensions simultaneously. One passage is particularly relevant. The faithful of the coarse emperor believe they serve by choice. They recite prayers and imagine their devotion is voluntary. This is false comfort. They serve because their minds are structured to serve. Their faith is architecture. Remove it and they collapse. We who serve the true powers understand this better. We know that service is not choice, but acknowledgement. We do not choose to feed the gods with our actions. We simply recognize that we already do, that we always have, that the universe itself is structured to channel consciousness into the warp, and the gods are merely the largest eddies in that flow. When a servant tries to change allegiance, they are not betraying their god. They are attempting to rebuild their mental architecture while living inside it. Imagine tearing down a building from the inside while you are still standing in it and trying to rebuild it in a different style before you fall. This is what betrayal of chaos entails. Most do not understand quickly enough. They believe they can simply declare new loyalty and receive new gifts. They do not understand that the old gifts must be fully removed before new ones can be integrated. And the old gifts are not gifts. They are structural modifications. Removing them is removing parts of yourself. I have seen 17 souls attempt this transformation. All 17 became examples. None achieved their goal. The gods do not prevent this. They do not need to. Physics prevents it. Metaphysics prevents it. The nature of consciousness itself prevents it. This is not punishment. This is education. The universe teaching its fundamental laws through the suffering of those who tried to break them. Jarael's text was classified as heresy by the Imperium. The Inquisition burned 4 copies, but the analysis was accurate. Jarael understood what the Imperium could not admit, that chaos is not evil in a moral sense. It is simply the natural consequence of consciousness existing in a universe where thought has substance. The Chaos Gods do not punish betrayal because they are petty or cruel. They punish betrayal because betrayal is attempting to violate the structure of reality itself, and reality enforces its own laws. There are gradations to chaos service. Not all servants are equally bound. Not all face the same consequences for attempting to leave. At the lowest level are those who have merely benefited from chaos without dedicating themselves. A soldier who feels Khorne's rage but does not acknowledge it. A scholar who uses Tzeentchian knowledge but does not pray. A survivor who accepts Nurgle's endurance without gratitude. These souls have shallow connections. They can turn back. It is difficult, the benefits are intoxicating, but it is possible. The Imperium sometimes recovers such individuals through aggressive faith re-education and psychic cleansing. At the middle level are those who have consciously dedicated themselves but have not yet received major blessings. They have sworn oaths, performed rituals, accepted the gods as real and worthy of service. Their souls bear marks, psychic signatures that identify them to demons and to sanctioned psychers. Turning back from this level is theoretically possible but practically nightmarish. The soul must be restructured entirely. Most who attempt this either die in the process or go mad from the pain. The few who succeed are never quite whole afterward. At the highest level are those who have received direct blessings from their god. Mutations, demonic gifts, personal attention from greater daemons or daemon princes. These souls are fundamentally rewritten. Their consciousness is integrated into their patron god's domain in the warp. Turning back is not merely difficult, it is definitionally impossible. You cannot separate the gift from the recipient. They are one thing now. Kale was at this highest level. He had received Nurgle's blessings. His body had been transformed. His mind had been reshaped. When he attempted to switch allegiances to Tzeentch, he was not changing teams. He was attempting to exist as 2 contradictory things simultaneously. The warp allowed this. The warp allows everything. The warp is possibility itself. But existence as a contradiction is not comfortable. It is not stable. It produces the screaming errors that become warnings to others. The final truth about chaos betrayal is this: it does not happen the way you think it does. You imagine betrayal as a moment of decision, a dramatic turning point where you reject your patron and choose another. But this is not how it works. You cannot reject a chaos god once you are connected to them. The connection is not sustained by your will. It is sustained by the structure of your soul. What actually happens is more subtle. You begin to doubt. You begin to want something. Kale wanted peace. Then he wanted power. These desires contradict each other. Peace requires surrender. Power requires assertion. Nurgle offered the first. Tzeentch offered the second. Both were being honest. Both gave exactly what they promised. Kale's mistake was thinking he could have both. The universe does not allow you to have contradictory things. It forces a resolution. In Kale's case, the resolution was that he became an example of why contradictions are not viable. His existence, or the ruined shadow of patron, does not provide. You perform a ritual for another power. You speak words that open channels to a different domain of the warp, and then you discover that you cannot close the original channel while opening the new one. Both powers pour into you simultaneously, not cooperating, not sharing, competing, each trying to reshape you according to their nature. And your consciousness, caught between them, experiences this as being torn apart slowly from the inside. The Chaos Gods do not watch this happening and think, "This one has betrayed us, let us punish them." They think nothing of the sort. They do not think in those terms. They simply continue flowing through the channels that exist. You opened a new channel without closing the old one. The consequences are automatic, mechanical, inevitable. This is why the punishment seems so absolute. It is not being imposed from outside. It is emerging from the structure of what you did to yourself. The Imperium teaches that chaos is temptation, that it lures the innocent into damnation. This is backwards. Chaos is revelation. It shows you what you already are, what you already want. It offers to help you become that thing fully. And once you accept that help, once you integrate it into your being, you discover that fully means absolutely. There is no partial commitment to chaos. There is no half service. You either embody your chosen principle entirely, or you become an unstable contradiction that reality slowly corrects through suffering. Existence, or the ruined shadow of existence that remained, served as proof that you must choose, that you must commit. That ambiguity is not freedom, but torture. This is the lesson every would-be betrayer learns eventually. You do not escape chaos. You do not switch sides in the great game. You choose your principle, you become that principle, and you continue being that principle until you are destroyed by something external. The only other option is to become a warning to others about why choosing matters. Gallus Prime was eventually reclaimed by the Imperium. The world was cleansed, re-sanctified, repopulated with penal colonists who needed absolution through labor. The ecclesiarchy built 7 new cathedrals. The administratum established new manufacturing quotas. Life returned to normal, which in the Imperium means life returned to structured suffering in service to a distant authority. But the cultists remember. In the underhives of nearby worlds, in the spaces between jump points where renegade ships gather, in the warp storms where mortal and daemon meet, the story of Cale Vane spread. Not his name necessarily. Most tellings lost the name after the first few generations, but the story remained. The story of the plague-bearer who tried to embrace change and was destroyed by his own ambition. The story of why you do not turn from your patron god. The story of what happens when you think you can serve chaos on your own terms. Young cultists hear this story from their mentors. Champions tell it to their warbands. Sorcerers include it in their teachings about the nature of warp dedication. Even daemons, in their own way, remember. They are made of memory and emotion. They are stories given form. And Cale's story is useful. It teaches mortals their place. The Imperium has its saints. Perfect examples of devotion that inspire the faithful to greater service. Chaos has its betrayers. Perfect examples of hubris that remind the faithful why total commitment matters. Cale was not special. His suffering was not unique. His mistake was common, but his existence as a warning is eternal. Somewhere in the warp, in the spaces where Nurgle's garden borders Tzeentch's impossible library, there is still an echo of what he was. A psychic scar that will not heal because it serves a purpose by remaining open. Other potential betrayers sense that scar. They feel it at the edges of their consciousness when they consider turning from their patron. They do not know what they are sensing, but they feel the wrongness, the pain, the fundamental violation of natural law. And most, not all, but most decide that loyalty is preferable to that unknown agony. This is how chaos maintains itself. Not through chains or threats, but through education. Through making the consequences of betrayal so absolute and so visible that loyalty becomes the only rational choice. The Imperium enforces loyalty through fear of punishment. Chaos enforces loyalty through understanding of consequences. The Imperium must constantly monitor and coerce. Chaos simply lets you see what happens when you violate the terms of your own transformation and you police yourself afterward. It is more efficient, it is more terrible, it is more honest. In the archives of the Departamento Munitorum, there is a record of Sergeant Cale Vane, 15th Mortisian Infantry. The record is brief. Date of conscription, date of deployment, date of death, marked as Gallus Prime, 5M41, killed in action against heretic forces. There is no note about his fall to chaos, no asterisk marking him as a traitor. To the administratum, he was simply another casualty. One among millions, his service record was processed, his remaining pay was calculated and dispatched to a family that had long since moved on, and his name was added to the endless lists of the dead. The Imperium did not learn from Cale. It never does. The vast machine of human empire grinds forward, producing soldiers and psychers and administrators and priests, deploying them to impossible wars, grinding them down through attrition and despair, and expressing surprise when some percentage turn to the dark gods. The percentage is predictable. The Munitorum has actuarial tables. They know that for every 1,000,000 soldiers deployed to extended combat zones, a certain number will fall to chaos. They account for this. They build it into their calculations. They simply deploy more soldiers to compensate. This is not stupidity. This is pragmatism. The Imperium cannot fix the conditions that create heretics without fundamentally restructuring itself. And restructuring would require admitting that the current structure is flawed, and admitting flaw is heresy. So the cycle continues. The Imperium produces desperate, suffering servants. Chaos offers them relief. Some accept. The Imperium kills them or they become warnings. New desperate servants are produced. The cycle repeats. Cale was one iteration of an infinite loop. His specific circumstances were unique. His general pattern was universal. The Imperium will produce 10,000 more like him this year, and next year, and every year until the Imperium falls or until humanity finally goes extinct. The Chaos Gods do not mind. They are patient. They are eternal. They feed on the emotions of mortals, and the Imperium is the most efficient emotion production system ever created. Despair, rage, ambition, excess. The Imperium generates all of these in abundance. The fact that it also generates faith in the Emperor is irrelevant. Faith is just another emotion, and it feeds the warp like any other. Some scholars have theorized that the Emperor himself might be becoming a Chaos God, a fifth power formed from humanity's desperate worship. If true, this would be the ultimate irony. The Emperor fought to starve the Chaos Gods. His Imperium instead feeds them, and his own deification might create the very thing he sought to prevent. But this is speculation. What is certain is that the system continues, the machine runs, and beings like Cale Vane are the lubricant that keeps it running smoothly. On a world 3 sectors away from Gallus Prime, a priest of Nurgle named Solon teaches new cultists the ways of grandfather's love. He is patient, he is kind. He explains that suffering is temporary, but acceptance is eternal. He shows them how to embrace decay, how to find peace in deterioration, how to love the cycle of death and rebirth. And when his students ask if they can ever leave grandfather's service, if they can ever choose another path, he tells them about Cale Vane. He does not know that name. The story has changed too much in transmission, but he tells them about the plague bearer who sought change and found only fragmentation. He tells them gently. There is no anger in his voice, no judgment, only sadness that someone suffered needlessly by failing to understand what they had become. Grandfather loves all his children, Solon says, but love does not mean you are free to leave. Love means you are welcomed completely, integrated, absolutely, made part of the family, forever. This is not a prison. This is belonging, and belonging means you cannot be separate anymore. You are part of something greater than yourself. Trying to tear yourself away only tears yourself apart. The new cultists nod. They understand. Some part of them resists. There is always resistance, always that last fragment of independence that does not want to surrender. But they see the choice clearly now. Embrace what they are becoming, or resist and become like the betrayer in the story. Whole or fragmented. At peace or in pieces. Most choose peace. Some choose fragmentation, though they do not realize it yet. In 5 years or 10 or 20, some of these students will grow ambitious, will hear whispers from other powers, will think they can have more than grandfather offers. and they will begin their own journey toward becoming examples. This, too, is part of the cycle. The lessons must be relearned by each generation. Knowledge of consequences does not prevent those consequences, it simply makes them more tragic. You knew what would happen. You chose it anyway. Now you suffer not in ignorance, but in full understanding of how you destroyed yourself. Solon knows this. He has seen it before. He will see it again. He teaches the lesson anyway, because teaching is what he does. It is what grandfather made him for. And if some students fail to learn, well, they become new lessons for the next generation. Nothing is wasted in grandfather's garden. Even failure feeds growth. This document exists in several forms. You are reading one version now. Other versions circulate in the Calixis sector, transcribed by hand onto parchment that crumbles at the edges. Heretical documents, classified by the Inquisition, burned when found. But documents like this are never truly destroyed. They are ideas, and ideas spread through minds like disease through bodies. Some who read this will dismiss it as propaganda, chaos corruption disguised as scholarship. They will report it to the authorities and feel righteous in doing so. They are not wrong to be suspicious. This document does serve chaos in its way. By explaining the consequences of betrayal, it paradoxically makes chaos service seem more rational, more organized, more like something you can navigate if you simply follow the rules. Others will read this and understand the trap. Understanding how chaos punishes betrayal requires understanding chaos itself, and understanding chaos is the first step towards serving it. Knowledge of the dark gods is itself a form of corruption. You cannot study them objectively. They are subjective forces. Knowing them changes you. This is the final truth about chaos that the Imperium will not acknowledge. You cannot fight something you do not understand, but understanding it means letting it inside your mind. The Imperium chooses ignorance because knowledge is dangerous. But ignorance creates the conditions that drive people to chaos in the first place. The desperate and the suffering do not need to understand chaos theologically. They only need to know that it offers relief from the Imperium's relentless cruelty. Cale Vane sought relief. He found it. Then he sought more. Then he found consequences. His story is complete. His lesson is eternal. Somewhere in the archives of the Navis Nobilite, there is a blank space where a navigator's name should be. Somewhere in the warp, there is a scar where a soul tore itself apart. Somewhere in the dark, a story is being told about why you do not betray the gods. And somewhere right now, another desperate soldier is accepting another god's bargain. The cycle continues. The Imperium produces suffering. Chaos offers escape. The escape becomes a new form of bondage. Some accept it, some resist. Those who resist become warnings.